The arena was big and dark. It was made of black stone that had seen many deaths. Above, seats went up and up like a giant mouth. Thousands of the Kravik sat there. They were tall aliens with scales like black glass. Day stood alone in the middle. His hands were empty. He breathed slowly and stayed calm. He was shorter than any Kravik in the room. His body looked weak next to their big muscles. He wore a simple gray jumpsuit. It showed he was a worker, the lowest kind in the galaxy. Up high in the best seat, War Chief Voran stood up. His armor had skulls on it, skulls of enemies he had killed. His voice was loud and filled the whole arena. A chip in Day's head made the words into his language. "This human has asked for the trial of claws," Voran said. He sounded amused, like this was funny. "He says his people should not be prey anymore. He wants humans to be warriors." The Kravik laughed. It sounded like stones grinding together. The sound echoed off the walls. Day's friend Hana watched from the slave pens. Her fingers held the energy wall that kept slaves away from the arena. Next to her stood old Tay. His face looked grim. He had seen 3 humans try this trial in 40 years of being a slave. All of them had died. "The boy is crazy," whispered Youngmi. She had worked in the mines with Day. "No human has ever passed this trial. Day is different," Hana said quietly. "He has been getting ready for 3 years." Voran kept talking. "The human will face 3 tests. First, the Gauntlet of Fangs. Second, he fights 1 Kravik warrior. Third," Voran smiled. His mouth parts opened wide, "he will face a Scrath Warbeast." The crowd roared with excitement. Everyone knew about the Scrath. It was a monster the Kravik had made in their labs. It stood as tall as 2 men. It had sharp claws and armor skin that stopped plasma guns. No one had ever beat it in the arena. Day closed his eyes for a moment. He made himself calm inside. He thought about his sister G1. She had died 5 years ago from working too hard in the space mines. He thought about his parents. They fee. Day closed his round. The Kravik had killed them for teaching human children to read. He thought about every human who died thinking they would always be slaves. Then he opened his eyes. He looked at Voran and nodded once. "Let the trial begin." The floor opened up. From the dark hole came 6 young Kravik. They were not adults yet, but each one was almost as tall as Day. Their claws were still sharp. They knew how to hunt. The Gauntlet of Fangs tested if a warrior was fast and smart. Most people who tried this test tried to fight back. That was their mistake. Day ran. He sprinted toward the closest young Kravik. It jumped at him with claws out. At the last second, Day dropped down and slid on the ground. He went right between the creature's legs. He rolled and stood up and kept running. His small size helped him fit in spaces the bigger creatures could not reach. The crowd stopped laughing. They started to make interested sounds. Day led the young Kravik around in a pattern. He made them crash into each other as they tried to catch him. When one fell down, he ran to it fast. He did not try to kill it. Instead, he hit it in certain spots on its body. The young Kravik stopped moving. Its nerves were not working right. 5 were left. Old Tay leaned forward in the slave pens. He studied them, he said quietly. He knows how their bodies work. For 15 minutes, Day turned the arena into a dance. He never stopped moving. He never let them trap him in a corner. One by one, he dropped the young Kravik with careful hits to their nerves. All 6 lay on the ground, shaking but alive. The crowd went silent. Day stood in the center. He was breathing hard, but he was standing. He had done something no prey species had ever done. He beat the Gauntlet of Fangs without killing anyone. He showed perfect control. Voran stood up slowly. His gold eyes stared at the human below. "Good," he growled. "But the gauntlet is only the start." A door opened in the arena floor. Through it, came a Kravic warrior in full armor. His plasma blade was glowing. His shield was crackling with energy. He had scars all over his body, from many fights. The real trial was about to begin. Day looked at the warrior coming toward him. This was Zethrak. He was a veteran who had fought 100 battles. He stood almost 3 meters tall. His muscles looked like steel cables under his scaled skin. The plasma blade in his right hand hummed with deadly power. His left arm had a shield that flickered with a defensive field. Day had no weapons, no armor, just his jumpsuit and what he knew. In the slave pens, Hana could not watch. She turned away, but Tay's hand caught her shoulder. "You shame him by looking away," the old man said quietly. "Whatever happens, you must see it." Zethrak walked in a circle around Day. He moved like a predator. He was patient. The crowd started chanting his name. It was a rhythmic sound that bounced off the walls. "You fight well for prey," Zethrak said. His voice was loud across the arena. "But the young ones were playing." "I am not playing." Day did not answer. He kept his eyes on Zethrak's center. He watched for signs that would show an attack was coming. For 3 years, he had studied every video of Kravic fighting he could find in the slave computers. He had watched their movements frame by frame. He knew their tactics. He understood how they thought. The Kravic were apex predators. That was their strength, but it was also their weakness. Zethrak jumped forward very fast. His plasma blade swung toward Day's middle. Day dropped flat on the ground. The hot blade passed just above his back. He rolled sideways as Zethrak's clawed foot smashed down where his head had been. The stone floor cracked. "Fast," Zethrak said. "But speed alone will not save you." The Kravic warrior kept attacking. His blade and claws worked together in deadly patterns. Day moved backward. Always moving. Always just out of reach. Day moved better. Always. Day moved better. Day moved better. To the crowd, it looked like a cat playing with a mouse. It was only a matter of time before the end came. But Tay saw something different. "He is not running away," the old man whispered. "He is moving to certain places." Day led Zethrak in a specific pattern across the floor. He moved over the spots where the young Kravic had fallen. The young ones were waking up now. They were confused and stirring. Zethrak was focused only on Day. He did not notice when his foot caught one of the young ones' tails. The warrior stumbled. Just for a tiny moment, Day moved. He closed the distance in one fast burst of speed. He got inside Zethrak's guard. His hand shot out with fingers straight. He hit the nerve spot at the base of the warrior's shield arm. The shield flickered and died. Zethrak roared. He swung his blade in a wide arc. But Day was already moving. He used the Kravic's own power against him. He grabbed Zethrak's blade arm with both hands and twisted. He did not use strength. He used exact leverage at the joint. The plasma blade fell to the arena floor with a clatter. The crowd stopped chanting. Zethrak backhanded Day with his free hand. Day flew through the air and hit the ground hard. He rolled with the hit and came up with blood on his lip. But he was still moving. Zethrak came forward with murder in his gold eyes. All pretense of honor was gone. But now Day had what he needed. There was distance between them. And Zethrak's own plasma blade lay on the ground between them. The Kravic warrior saw what Day planned to do. He lunged for the blade. But Day was faster. His hand closed around the handle. He rolled sideways and brought the blade up, just as Zethrak's weight came down. The warrior's own speed drove him onto the plasma blade. Zethrak staggered back. There was a burned wound across his chest where his armor was weakest. He fell to one knee. He was breathing hard. His gold eyes were wide with shock. Day stood up. The plasma blade was in his hand. He pointed it at Zethrak's throat. "I could kill you," Day said quietly. His words were picked up by the arena's microphones and played for the shocked crowd. "But I am not here to prove humans can kill." I am here to prove we are warriors. He turned off the blade. He tossed it aside. Zethrex stared at him for a long time. Then, slowly, he bowed his head down. It was a gesture that meant submission. The whole crowd was shocked. Voran stood up from his seat. His face showed nothing. The human has passed the second trial, he announced. But one test is left. The test that has broken every challenger for 100 years. The big doors at the far end of the arena started to open. From the darkness came a sound that made even the tough Kravik warriors lean forward. It was a roar that spoke of hunger and rage and total violence. The Skroth Warbeast had arrived. The Skroth that came out of the darkness was made for destruction. It was 4 meters of muscle and metal armor on its skin. It moved on 6 legs that could walk like an animal or stand up like a person when it attacked. Its head was huge with jaws full of teeth like saw blades. Its eyes glowed red from drugs that made it angry. The crowd exploded with bloodthirsty cheers. Day felt his heart beating fast against his ribs. All his preparation and study had led to this moment. He had watched videos of the Skroth fighting. He had seen it tear through armored warriors like they were paper. The beast had been designed by Kravik scientists to be impossible to kill. It was a living war machine that only knew hunger and violence. In the slave pens, Hana had her hand over her mouth. Tears ran down her face. Youngmi held her close. But even Youngmi's eyes were stuck on the small figure standing alone in the arena. The Skroth circled Day. Its movements were surprisingly graceful for something so big. It was studying him. Day could see the intelligence behind those red eyes. This was not just a mindless beast. It had been trained and conditioned to be the perfect killer. The human may choose a weapon, Voran announced. There was cruel amusement in his voice. A panel in the arena wall opened. Inside were many weapons. Plasma blades, shock lances, even a small pulse rifle. Day looked at the weapons. Then he looked back at the Skroth. He thought about everything he had learned in 3 years of preparation. He thought about the videos he had studied and the patterns he had seen. He thought about the one piece of information that everyone had missed. He walked away from the weapons. The crowd's cheers turned to confused murmurs. The human refuses weapons? Voran called down. He could not hide his surprise. I do not need weapons to break a beast. Day replied. His voice was steady, even though fear ran through him. I just need to understand it. The Skroth roared. It seemed offended that this small creature was so bold. It charged. 6 legs pushed it forward with terrifying speed. The arena floor shook with each step of its claws. Day ran. But not away. He ran toward the arena wall at an angle. The Skroth followed. It closed the distance with each stride. At the last moment, Day jumped. His hands caught a small crack in the smooth wall. He climbed 3 meters in seconds. His muscles screamed in pain. Just as the Skroth's jaws snapped shut where he had been standing, the beast slammed into the wall. The stone cracked. But Day was already moving. He ran along a narrow ledge that went around the arena. He is stalling, someone in the crowd shouted. The human is a coward. But Tay watched with narrow eyes as Day led the Skroth on a chase around the arena. No, the old man said quietly. He is learning. Tay watched with Tay. Tay watched with Narrow. Tay watched with Narrow. Tay watched with Narrow. And he was. Every time the Skroth lunged, Day observed. Every roar. Every movement pattern. Every shift in posture. He recorded it all, in his mind. He watched how the beast's back left leg favored its weight. It was a tiny compensation for some old injury that the scientists had never fully fixed. He watched how its attacks always came in a specific sequence, how its engineered instincts took over its tactical thinking when it got frustrated. Most importantly, he watched how it responded to the stimulant drugs in its system. After 10 minutes of the chase, Day dropped from the ledge back to the arena floor. The Skroth spun to face him. It was breathing heavily. Its red eyes were even brighter now. The chemicals that gave it extra aggression were building up. They were pushing it toward a berserker state. "Come on," Day whispered to himself. He watched the beast's posture. Just a little more. The Scroth charged again. But this time Day held his ground until the last possible second. He dove sideways. As the beast passed, he drove his fist into that weak back leg, not hard enough to seriously hurt it, but hard enough to cause pain. The Scrath roared and spun. It was faster than Day expected. Its tail whipped around and caught him in the ribs. He flew through the air. He hit the arena floor hard. He tasted blood. His vision blurred. In the slave pens, Hana screamed. The Scrath moved toward Day's body on the ground. Victory was certain. Its jaws opened wide. It was ready to end this presumptuous prey creature, once and for all. And then something unexpected happened. The Scrath staggered. Its pupils got big, then small, very fast. The stimulant drugs that had been building in its system had reached critical levels. The scientists had designed the Scrath to maintain peak aggression for exactly 30 minutes of combat. Beyond that, the chemical balance became unstable. No fight with the Scrath had ever lasted longer than 15 minutes. Until now. Day pushed himself to his feet. Blood ran from his mouth. His ribs screamed in pain. But he had been counting the seconds. He had been estimating the hormone buildup. He had gambled everything on this one weakness. The Scroth shook its massive head. It was confused by the chemical storm in its brain. Its movements became erratic. It was aggressive, but uncoordinated. Now came the hard part. Day approached the beast slowly. His hands were extended. He spoke in a low, steady voice. "I know," he said quietly. "I know what they did to you. I know how it hurts." The Scrath snapped at him. But the attack was slow and confused. "We are not so different, you and I," Day continued. He circled closer. "Both of us were made into weapons. Both of us are trapped in someone else's design. Closer now." Close enough to see the beast's eyes clearing slightly. The red glow was beginning to fade as the hormone flood started to recede. "But you are not just a weapon," Day said. "And I am not just prey." He reached out. He placed his hand on the Scrath's armored snout. The arena went absolutely silent. The Scroth could have killed him with a single snap of its jaws. Every muscle in Day's body was tense. He was ready for death. But the beast did not strike. Instead, it lowered its massive head. The aggression faded from its eyes. It was replaced by something the crowd had never seen in a Scroth before. Recognition. Awareness. The consciousness that lay buried beneath layers of biological programming. Day pressed his forehead against the beast's armored skull. He whispered too quietly for anyone else to hear. "Thank you for not killing me. Now show them. You are more than what they made you." The Scrath's chest rumbled. It was not a roar. It was something almost like a purr. In the high seat, Voren rose slowly. His expression was one of absolute shock. Around the arena, thousands of Kravik warriors sat in stunned silence. They could not process what they were seeing. The human had not killed the Warbeast. He had broken it. Broken the conditioning, the programming, the very purpose for which it had been created. And in doing so, he had proven something far more dangerous than mere combat skill. He had proven that humans understood dominance in a way the Kravik had never imagined. The silence stretched on. It felt like forever. Day stood with his hand, still on the Scroth's armored head. Both of them were breathing heavily. Both were alive when everyone had expected one or both to be dead. Voran's claws scraped against the stone armrest of his seat. The sound was amplified in the terrible quiet. Around him, the Kravik nobility exchanged glances. Some showed confusion. Others showed concern. A few showed something that looked dangerously close to respect. "Impossible," breathed Zethrak. He was still kneeling where Day had defeated him. The warrior's gold eyes were fixed on the scene before him. "The Scrath's conditioning is absolute. It cannot be broken." But it had been broken. the evidence stood before them all. In the slave pens, chaos erupted. Humans who had spent years, decades, or entire lifetimes as slaves were shouting and crying and hugging each other. Hana collapsed to her knees. Sobs shook her body. Tay simply nodded slowly. It was as if he was confirming something he had always suspected. Youngmi grabbed the energy barrier. She did not care about the painful shock. "He did it," she whispered. Then louder. "He did it! He did it!" Voran finally found his voice. "The human has." He paused. He seemed to struggle with the words. "Completed the trial of claws." The crowd erupted in many different reactions. Young warriors roared approval. They appreciated the display of skill. Traditionalists howled with outrage. They saw this as an insult to Kravik supremacy. Heated arguments quickly threatened to spill into violence. Voran slammed his fist against his armrest. The boom echoed across the arena. "Silence!" The crowd became quiet. But the tension remained thick in the air. "The human has passed all 3 challenges," Voran continued. "By our oldest laws. This gives him the right to ask for reclassification of his species." He paused. His eyes narrowed as he looked down at Day. "But passing the trial is only the first step. Now comes the negotiation." With a gesture, Voran made the arena floor shift. A platform rose beneath Day and the Skroth. It lifted them to the level of the high seat. Guards moved to stop them, but Voran waved them back. Day faced the war chief across 10 meters of space. He was very aware that the Skroth stood behind him. Its massive presence was both a shield and a statement. "You have proven yourself a warrior by our standards," Voran said. His voice carried across the arena. "But one warrior does not speak for an entire species. How many humans can do what you did today?" Rees. 2. One warrior. 2. It was the question Day had been preparing for. How many Kravik can defeat a Skroth Warbeast with bare hands? He countered. A ripple of uncomfortable shifting went through the Kravik warriors. The answer was none. No Kravik had ever defeated a Skroth without weapons. "My species does not need every individual to be a warrior," Day continued. His voice grew stronger. "Just like yours does not. What we need is the opportunity to prove ourselves. To train. To contribute to galactic society as equals rather than slaves." "Pretty words," growled Thex. He was one of Voran's advisors, a grizzled warrior whose hide bore the scars of countless battles. "But humans are weak. Your bones break easily. Your claws are pathetic. You have no natural armor, no enhanced senses. You are prey pretending to be predators." Day met Thex's gaze steadily. "You are right. We are physically weaker than Kravik. Our claws are useless. Our hides are fragile. But that is not what makes a species prey or predator." He turned slowly. He addressed the entire arena now. "You judge strength by size and claws. But my species climbed to the top of our homeworld's food chain with neither. We did it with this." He tapped his temple. "With intelligence, adaptability, and the ability to understand our enemies better than they understand themselves." "I studied your biology for 3 years," Day continued. "I learned your nerve clusters, your movement patterns, your psychology. I understood the Skroth's conditioning better than the scientists who created it. That is what humans do. We learn. We adapt. We overcome." Voran leaned forward. "And what do you propose? That we simply release all humans from labor class designation? Arm you? Train you? What stops you from turning those weapons on us? The same thing that stops any warrior race from constant civil war," Day replied. "Mutual benefit. Humans do not want to replace the Kravik. We want to stand beside you. Your empire is vast, but you are stretched thin. You need administrators, engineers, scientists, roles you consider beneath warrior class, but essential to civilization. Let humans fill those roles with dignity and fair compensation. In return, You gain billions of capable workers who will strengthen your empire rather than resist it. And if we refuse? Thex snarled. Day's expression hardened. Then, you make 5 billion humans into your permanent enemies. We may be weak individually, but we are patient. We are creative. And we never forget. Today I showed you that even your perfect killing machine can be turned. How long before humans figure out how to turn your weapons, your ships, your infrastructure against you? It was a dangerous gamble. He was threatening the Kravik nobility. Several warriors stood. Their hands went to their weapons. But Voran held up a hand. That sounds like a threat, the war chief said quietly. It is a warning, Day corrected. And an offer. You can have humans as willing allies who strengthen your empire, or unwilling enemies who undermine it from within. The first option is better for everyone. No. Voran stared at Day for a long moment. Then he surprised everyone by laughing. It was a deep, rumbling sound. You have courage, human, and cunning. Perhaps your species is more than we believed. He stood. The entire arena fell silent once more. I will bring this matter before the Grand Council. They will decide if humanity merits reclassification. But, he pointed at Day, you and 50 humans of your choosing will be granted provisional warrior class status immediately. As honor guards to your petition, you will have 1 cycle to prepare your case. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some approved. Others were outraged. Furthermore, Voran continued, as the first human to complete the trial of claws, you are entitled to a boon. Name it. Day did not hesitate. The humans in the slave pens below us. Release them from their current assignments. Allow them to join me as the provisional group. And I want the Scroth. The Warbeast? Voran's mandibles spread in surprise. What use do you have for it? Day turned to look at the massive creature standing behind him. Its red eyes had returned to a natural amber color. It deserves better than being a tool for entertainment. Let it choose its own path. Day, Resence, just as I am asking you to let humans choose theirs. For a moment, Day thought Voran would refuse. Then the war chief nodded slowly. Granted. The beast is yours to do with as you see fit. He paused. What is your name, human warrior? Day. Then let it be known. Day of the humans has earned his standing through blade and blood. Let no Kravik warrior claim otherwise, without facing me personally. It was the highest honor a war chief could give. It sent a clear message to the entire Kravik Empire. Humanity now had a champion. And that champion had powerful backing. As the platform lowered Day back to the arena floor, he allowed himself a small smile. The hardest part was done. Now came the real work, transforming a population of slaves into a people who could stand as equals among the stars. Behind him, the Scroth rumbled softly. Day reached back to rest his hand on its armor. They had both broken free of their chains today. Now they just had to make sure it lasted. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. Day and his chosen 50 humans were moved from the slave pens to new quarters in the warrior district. The change was shocking. Instead of cramped cells with thin sleeping mats, they had individual rooms with real beds. Instead of nutrient paste, they had access to proper food. But Day did not let anyone get comfortable. From the first day, he pushed them hard. We have 3 months to prepare our case for the Grand Council, he told the group assembled in their common area. 3 months to prove that humanity deserves a place in this empire. We cannot waste a single day. Hana raised her hand. What do you need us to do? Everything, Day replied. We need to study Kravik law, history, and culture. We need to understand their economy and military structure. We need to find ways that humans can contribute that go beyond just being laborers. He looked around at the faces watching him. Some were hopeful. Some were skeptical. All were tired from years of slavery. "I know you are exhausted," Day said more gently. "I know you have every reason to be cynical. But this is our one chance. If we fail, every human in this empire stays a slave. If we succeed, we change the future for billions of our people." Tay stood up. "Then we better get to work." The old man's support meant something. Soon others were nodding and standing as well. Over the following weeks, Day divided the group into teams. Some focused on learning Kravic law and procedures. Others studied their economic systems and found inefficiencies. A few with technical backgrounds analyzed their military logistics. Day himself spent long hours in the Kravic archives. He learned their history, their values, their fears. He learned that despite their strength and dominance, the Kravic Empire was facing serious problems. Their birth rate was dropping. Their military was overstretched. Their conquered peoples simmered with resentment. One evening, Hana found Day in the archives. It was late, and he looked exhausted. "You need to sleep," she said. "I will," Day replied. "But first, I need to understand something." "What?" "Why the Kravic are so afraid of giving up their dominance," Day said. "Their entire culture is built on being the strongest. If they admit that other species can be equals, it threatens their whole identity. So how do we convince them?" Hana asked. Day smiled tiredly. "We show them that equality does not mean weakness. We show them that a diverse empire is stronger than a uniform one. We show them that cooperation is not submission." "That is a big task." "Yes," Day agreed. "But we have done impossible things before." He looked toward where the Scrath rested in a specially built enclosure. The beast had become surprisingly gentle. It followed Day around like a large dog. Its transformation from killing machine to companion was itself a powerful symbol. "If we can break the conditioning of a warbeast," Day said, "we can break the conditioning of an empire." 3 months had passed since Day completed the trial of claws. In that time, the provisional group of 50 humans had changed from slaves into something new in Kravic society. They were now a formal delegation representing their entire species. The Grand Council chamber was massive. It was carved from a single asteroid and could hold 10,000 Kravic from across the empire. Today, every seat was filled. Hundreds of war chiefs, clan leaders, and military commanders had gathered to decide humanity's fate. The air hummed with tension and the competing sense of different Kravic bloodlines. Day stood in the center of the chamber floor. Hana and Tay flanked him. Behind them stood the other 47 humans of their delegation. Each wore simple but dignified gray robes that Hana had designed. At the back, lying in coiled readiness, was the Scrath. It was no longer a mindless warbeast. Now it was a symbol of transformation and possibility. High Overseer Krithax presided over the council. Her ancient scales bore the marks of centuries. She was older than the current empire itself. She was a living link to the Kravic's warrior past. "We gather to judge the petition of the species called humans," Krithax announced. Her voice carried through the chamber without any amplification. "War Chief Vorin has sponsored their reclassification. Let the humans speak." Day stepped forward. In the months since the trial, he had studied Kravic law, history, and culture. With the same intensity, he had studied their combat forms. He knew this decision would not be swayed by emotion or appeals to mercy. The Kravic respected only one thing: demonstrated value. "Honored elders," Day began. He used the formal address that acknowledged the council's authority. 3 months ago, I stood in an arena and proved that individual humans could meet your warrior standards. Today, I am here to prove that humanity as a species can strengthen the Kravic Empire. He gestured to Tay. The old man stepped forward, carrying a data slate. "In 3 months, my people have studied your empire's infrastructure. We have identified 17 critical bottlenecks in your supply chains. We have designed solutions for 12 ongoing engineering problems that your warrior engineers considered unsolvable. We have created administrative systems that could free up 30% of your warrior class for actual combat duties. Tay activated the slate. Holographic displays filled the air above the council floor. Supply routes optimized. Resource distribution reimagined. Administrative hierarchies streamlined. A murmur ran through the assembled Kravik. Several clan leaders leaned forward. They studied the displays with obvious interest. "This is bureaucracy, not strength," objected Thex. He had become the leading voice of opposition to humanity's reclassification. "You prove only that your species is suited for servitude, not partnership. Is it servitude when it is chosen?" Hana spoke up. Her voice was clear and strong. She had overcome her initial fear of speaking before the Kravik. She had channeled it, instead, into determination. "Is it weakness to excel at skills your species finds tedious? The strongest empire is built not on warriors alone. It is built on warriors supported by efficient systems that let them focus on what they do best." "Well said," rumbled a voice from the upper tiers. Commander Kelthax was a naval leader who had built his reputation on successful campaigns. He rose to his feet. "I have reviewed these proposals. If implemented, they would free up enough resources for me to expand my fleet by 20% without additional taxation. That means 20% more ships to defend our borders." Other voices joined in. Some supported. Some opposed. The debate raged for hours. Day and his delegation answered every challenge. They provided data for every claim. They demonstrated again and again that humanity could contribute meaningfully to the Empire. Finally, Krithax raised her hand for silence. "The technical merits are established. But there is a deeper question." Her ancient eyes, fixed on Day. "The Kravik Empire was built on a simple truth. The strong dominate the weak. If we elevate humans to equality, we undermine the foundation of our society. Why should we risk that?" This was the moment Day had been preparing for. The ultimate question that would determine not just humanity's fate, but potentially the future of the entire empire. "Because your empire is dying," Day said quietly. Shocked silence fell over the chamber. Several warriors reached for weapons, but Krithax gestured for calm. "Explain," she commanded. Her voice was dangerous. Day took a breath. "Your species conquered this sector of space 200 years ago. Since then, you have absorbed 14 species into your labor class. Your territory has tripled. Your military has grown exponentially. But," he activated his own data slate, "your birth rate has dropped by 40% in the same period." New displays appeared in the air. Population curves trending downward. Demographic projections showing the Kravik warrior class shrinking over the next century. "You are spread too thin," Day continued. "Every new conquest requires more warriors to garrison, more administrators to manage, more resources to defend, but you refuse to let conquered species rise to partnership. You fear it threatens your dominance. So you force warriors to do administrative work, which they resent. You overextend your military, which creates vulnerabilities. And you breed resentment among billions who could be allies." He looked up at Krithax directly. "In 50 years, the Ixan Collective will realize how stretched you are. In 100 years, you will face internal rebellions you cannot suppress. In 200 years, the Kravik Empire will collapse under its own weight, not because you were not strong enough, but because you could not adapt. And humans can save us?" Thex scoffed. "Arrogant words from a prey species. Not just humans," Day replied. "All of the species you have conquered. The Vraliks are natural pilots, better than Kravik at high-speed combat maneuvers. The Orthim have mathematical minds that could revolutionize your navigation systems. The Kelmar can survive in toxic environments where Kravik cannot. Each species has strengths you are wasting by forcing them into generic labor roles." He spread his hands. "I am not asking you to make us equal out of kindness. I am asking you to do it because it is strategically necessary. Reform your empire from a hierarchy of dominance into a meritocracy of contribution. Let each species excel at what they do best. The Kravik will still lead. Your warrior traditions, your strength, your honor codes make you natural leaders. But you will lead an empire that is actually sustainable. One that grows stronger with each generation instead of hollower. Voran stood from his seat. The human speaks truth that many of us have sensed, but refuse to acknowledge. Our empire needs change, or it will face the same fate as every empire before it. Collapse from within. Krithax regarded Day with an unreadable expression. You propose nothing less than the fundamental transformation of our society. I propose its survival. Day corrected. And I propose starting with humans as a test case. Grant us warrior class status. Give us 1 generation to prove we can contribute as partners. If we fail, you can revoke our status. If we succeed, you will have a model for integrating the other conquered species. And if we refuse entirely? Krithax asked. Then in 50 years, when the Ixen attack your stretched flank, remember this conversation, Day said quietly. Remember that you had a chance to build something stronger and chose pride over pragmatism. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Krithax turned to the assembled council. We will vote. All in favor of humanity's reclassification to warrior class status, show your sign. The chamber filled with the sound of thousands of claws being drawn across scales. It was the traditional Kravik vote of approval. Day's heart pounded as he tried to count, but there were too many. All opposed? Another wave of sound, perhaps slightly smaller, but still significant. Krithax counted silently. Her expression revealed nothing. Finally, she spoke. By a margin of 632 votes, the Council approves humanity's reclassification. It will be provisional for 1 generation. 30 years. At that time, we will convene again to evaluate the results. The chamber erupted in sound, some cheering, some roaring in protest. But the decision was made. Day felt his knees weaken with relief. But he kept his posture strong. Beside him, Hana was crying silently. Tay had closed his eyes, as if in prayer. However, Krithax continued. The chamber quieted again. There are conditions. Day of the Humans will serve as the first human clan chief. He will be responsible for organizing his people and reporting directly to the Grand Council. 50 human leaders will train at our military academies. 100,000 humans will be relocated to mixed settlements. They will live alongside Kravik families to foster understanding between our species. She fixed Day with her ancient gaze. You will have your chance, human. But by every other species, hoping for similar elevation. Understood, honored elder, Day replied. He bowed deeply. As the council began to disperse, Voran approached Day's delegation. You gambled everything on this moment, the war chief said. I hope you realize the magnitude of what you have just taken on. I do, Day replied. But anything worth having is worth fighting for. Voran's mandibles spread in what Day had learned was a smile, spoken like a true warrior. Come. We have much work to do. As they left the chamber, Day looked back at the Skrath. It rumbled softly and fell into step behind them. The beast had become something of a mascot for the human delegation. It was living proof that even the most ingrained conditioning could be overcome with patience and understanding. Outside the chamber, news of the decision was already spreading. Across the empire, humans in labor camps were receiving word that their status had changed. Some were celebrating. Others were cautiously hopeful. A few were too beaten down by years of slavery to believe it could be real. But it was real, and it was just the beginning. Hana walked beside Day as they headed toward their new quarters in the warrior district. Do you think we can really do this? She asked quietly. Live up to all those promises? We have to, Day replied. Not just for us, but for everyone who comes after. We are writing the first chapter of a new story. One where being different does not mean being inferior. The first challenge came within days. The Kravik Military Academy sent word that the 50 human leaders could begin their training. But when Day's people arrived, they found that not everyone was happy about the new arrangement. A group of young Kravik warriors blocked the entrance. Their leader, a scarred veteran named Krax, stepped forward. This academy is for warriors, Krax said. Not for prey pretending to be strong. Day stepped forward calmly. The Grand Council has spoken. Humans have been granted warrior class status. One human passed the trial, Krax snarled. That does not make your entire species worthy. The tension was thick. Day knew that how he handled this moment would set the tone for everything that followed. He could not back down, but he also could not afford to start a fight that would undermine everything they had worked for. You are right, Day said quietly. One human passing the trial does not prove the worth of our species. But 50 humans completing your academy training will give us the chance to prove ourselves. If we fail, you can say you were right. If we succeed, you will have helped build something stronger. End quote. Krax stared at him for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he stepped aside. Very well. But do not expect any special treatment. You will train like any Kravik warrior. And most of you will probably fail. We would not want it any other way, Day replied. The training was brutal. The Kravik instructors pushed the human students to their absolute limits. They were expected to complete the same physical challenges as Kravik warriors, despite their smaller size and weaker bodies. Many of the exercises seemed specifically designed to highlight human weaknesses, but Day had prepared his people for this. Use your advantages, he told them during their evening meetings. We cannot match Kravik's strength, but we can be faster. We can be more flexible. We can think tactically. Play to your strengths and cover for your weaknesses by working together. The human students began to adapt. In combat exercises, they used speed and coordination instead of brute force. In tactical scenarios, they found creative solutions that the Kravik instructors had not anticipated. In endurance challenges, they supported each other, never leaving anyone behind. Slowly, grudgingly, some of the Kravik instructors began to show respect. Meanwhile, Day worked on the larger challenge of organizing humanity's integration into the Empire. He selected administrators from among the freed slaves and gave them specific tasks. Some worked on improving supply chains. Others designed new administrative systems. A few focused on education, creating programs to teach young humans the skills they would need to thrive in this new world. Tay became Day's chief advisor. The old man's decades of experience and quiet wisdom were invaluable. Remember, Tay told Day one evening, we are not just changing human lives. We are changing Kravik society too. That makes us a threat to some and a hope to others. We must be careful to build alliances with those who see the value in what we are doing. Day took that advice to heart. He reached out to progressive Kravik leaders. He shared his plans openly and asked for their input. He showed that he was willing to learn from their experience and adapt his approach. Commander Kelthax became one of humanity's strongest allies. The naval commander had been impressed by the efficiency proposals and saw the potential for humans to strengthen the Empire's military logistics. He began incorporating human administrators into his fleet operations and was pleased with the results. Your people have a talent for organization, Kelthax told Day during one of their meetings. My supply chains have never run so smoothly, and it has freed up my warriors to focus on combat training instead of paperwork. That is exactly what we hope to achieve, Day replied. Kravik warriors should be warriors. Let humans handle the support systems that make your military effective. But not everyone was pleased with the changes. Thex and his faction continued to oppose human integration. They spread rumors that humans were plotting rebellion. They claimed that giving humans power would lead to the downfall of Kravik civilization. The situation came to a head 6 months into the integration program. A human administrator named Bo was found dead in his quarters. It looked like an accident, but Day suspected foul play. He brought his concerns to Voran. "Someone is trying to sabotage the integration," Day said. "If humans start dying mysteriously, it will undermine everything we have built." Voran's eyes narrowed. "You have proof?" "Not yet," Day admitted. "But I know an assassination when I see one." Bo was careful. He would not have died in such a careless way. "I will investigate," Voran promised. "But you must be careful. If Thex's faction is willing to kill to stop integration, you are in danger." Day knew Voran was right. But he also knew he could not show fear. The moment he appeared weak, everything would unravel. The investigation proved Day's suspicions. Bo had been poisoned. The assassin was traced back to Thex's faction. When confronted with the evidence, Thex denied any knowledge. But several of his subordinates were arrested. Voran called an emergency council meeting. "The laws of our empire protect all warrior class members equally," he declared. "Anyone who murders a human with warrior class status will be punished the same as if they murdered a Kravik. This is not negotiable." It was a powerful statement. It showed that the Kravik leadership was serious about integration. But it also deepened the divide between supporters and opponents of the new order. Despite the challenges, progress continued. The first class of human students graduated from the military academy. Not all 50 made it through. 7 had to withdraw due to injury or inability to meet the standards. But the 43 who graduated had proven they could succeed in a Kravik institution. The graduation ceremony was attended by thousands of Kravik and hundreds of humans. When the human graduates received their warrior badges, the crowd erupted in mixed reactions. Some cheered. Some remained silent. But no one could deny that these humans had earned their place. Day stood with Hana and Tay, watching the ceremony. "This is just the first step," he said quietly. "We have 29 more years to prove ourselves." We will," Hana replied confidently. "Look at how far we have come. Already." That evening, Day stood alone on a balcony overlooking the city. The Skroth lay beside him, its massive head resting on the ground. Day rested his hand on the beast's armored skull and thought about everything that had happened. A year ago, he had been a slave. His species had been considered the lowest form of life in the Empire. Now he was a clan chief. Humans were training as warriors, and the Empire itself was beginning to change. It was not perfect. There were still many Kravik who resented human elevation. There were still injustices to address and systems to reform. But the foundation had been laid for something better. Tay joined him on the balcony. The old man handed him a cup of tea. "Your sister would be proud," he said. "I hope so," Day replied. "Everything I did thinking about what she deserved. What all of us deserved. It is a heavy burden, being the first," Tay observed. "You will be judged more harshly than anyone who comes after. Every mistake will be magnified. Every success will be qualified with doubt." "I know," Day said. "But somebody had to be first. It might as well be me." They stood in silence, sipping tea and watching the alien stars. Then, Tay chuckled softly. "What?" Day asked. "I was just thinking," Tay said, "about how we went from being called weaklings to having a seat on the ruling council. The Kravik declared us prey, and we proved we are predators. Not the same kind they are, but predators nonetheless." Day smiled. "We are not predators, Tay. We are survivors. And in the end, that might be even more dangerous." Behind them, the Skroth rumbled contentedly. It was no longer a tool of violence. It had become a symbol of hope. A living reminder that transformation was possible. Just like humanity itself, the road ahead would be difficult. There would be setbacks and conflicts. There would be moments when giving up seemed easier than continuing. But Day had learned something important in that arena a year ago. Strength was not about size or claws or natural armor. Strength was about refusing to accept the limitations others placed on you. The Kravik had declared humanity weak. They had been wrong. And across the stars, 5 billion humans were about to make sure no one ever made that mistake again. Years would pass. Challenges would come and go. But the seeds of change had been planted. And from those seeds would grow a new kind of empire. One built not on dominance alone, but on cooperation. One that recognized that strength came in many forms. Day looked out at the city lights stretching to the horizon. Somewhere out there, human children were being born who would never know slavery, who would grow up as equals in a galactic society, who would have opportunities their parents could never have imagined. That was worth fighting for. That was worth everything. The Scrath raised its head and looked at Day. In its amber eyes, he saw understanding. They had both been prisoners of their programming. Both had been told what they were and what they could never be. And both had proven that transformation was possible. "Come on," Day said to his companions. "We have work to do tomorrow." They went inside, leaving the balcony empty, except for the stars and the promise of a better future. A future where being human meant something more than being prey. Where strength was measured not just by physical power, but by wisdom, compassion, and the courage to change. The Predator clans had declared the human a weakling. They had watched him break a Warbeast. But more importantly, they had watched him break the chains that bound his entire species. And that was a power no amount of physical strength could ever match.